Welcome to the 60s, the decade when the world loosened its tie and let its hair down. And TV went from blitzed out black and white to living colour, showing us a future where anything could happen. Where a clean-cut primetime hero was ready to make his mark.
Why the tears? You haven't been hit yet.
TV targeted its audience in a whole new way. Glossy action shows welcomed some colourful faces to the screen.
Agreed.
Racial integration made its debut and received some scathing reviews.
I think a lot of these mixed marriages are caused purely by downright sex.
Was it just barefaced cheek, or was it really all right in the 60s?
Hello, my darlings.
The 60s was a time of whopping cultural contrast. For most people in Britain, London's groovy hangouts might as well have been on the moon. And who could ever go to the moon? Television had been broadcasting for over 20 years, but it wasn't until the early 60s that sets became cheap enough for Mr. and Mrs. Public to turn it into a mass medium. What do shows of the time tell us about life back then?
For many of us, this is revolting. Men dancing with men.
TV tried a lot of things for the first time, and sometimes wisely didn't inhale. Settle down and watch the moments from TV's coming of age, because 60s telly is all about the shock of the new. New channels.
Good evening. This is BBC 2.
New tribes.
You don't mind him being called Hitler?
No, I think it's a great name.
And new discs. Sorry. We're showing the TV of the 1960s to people who were there at the time and to people whose parents weren't even born then.
That's so uncomfortable to watch.
That's got to be some of the weirdest television I've ever seen.
As the decade that ushered in the modern era, we're asking what 60s telly says about the attitudes of the time by showing it to today's audience.
What?
Should we be looking back at it with a sense of outrage?
Ouch.
Or a sense of humour?
I mean, unbelievable.
In the aftermath of post-war austerity, 1960s Britain was hungry for all things new. And TV was the freshest thing on the block, perfectly placed to project the modern age straight into people's homes. Early 60s telly was two stations broadcasting for only a few hours each day. So when the new channel BBC Two launched in 1964, expectations were high. Millions of viewers tuned in at 7:20 on a Monday night to hear TV's newest and freshest voice. Nope, your TV hasn't broken. When BBC Two went live, it did so without sound. But viewers didn't have too long to wait for the historic first words spoken by newsreader Gerald Priestland.
Again, that Yorkshire bus conductress who was sacked last week for calling Pakistani passengers stinking wogs has got her job back.
Whoa, whoa.
Union representatives went to see the management, and the conductress made an apology.
These words, if they were said now, but the BBC would be sued out of existence, and Gerald Priestland would disappear in a puff of smoke. And that has changed massively, for the better.
And the Beatles have been burgled.
The idea that people tuning in for the start of BBC Two, expecting to see a lavish production of Kiss Me Kate, and instead they get Gerald Priestland talking about a racist bus conductress.
The National Chamber of Trade claims that 1 in 4 housewives who started collecting trading stamps have given up.
If the programme looks a bit ramshackle for an opening night, that's because it was.
There was a massive power failure at Battersea Power Station that took out most of the electricity for West London, including Television Centre.
For the rest of the day.
They had to switch to Alexandra Palace, but they weren't exactly prepared, were they, for a proper newscast?
The building is 186 feet high. Excuse me, just like Channel 1. Hello?
And they're doing a grand job of holding things together, considering the panic going on behind the scenes.
And it was so bad it became compulsive viewing.
Unlike Channel 1, there's nobody there.
Everything's good about it. I think it's as good a comedy show as I've seen for a very long time.
Live broadcast is the riskiest form of TV, and it wasn't just BBC Two that came a cropper. In the 60s, almost all drama and comedy was transmitted live. No edits and no retakes.
The problem with live television was that so many things had to be got right by so many different people.
And even if the shows were pre-recorded, it didn't mean the actors were under any less pressure.
The budget allowed to edit 3 times per programme. That was it. So if someone fluffs a line very badly, then you don't do retakes. That's it. And what goes out is what was recorded. And sometimes it's very funny.
In an era where programmes went to air and then vanished, mistakes were quickly forgotten. Unless, of course, your show became an unexpected cult hit, like Doctor Who. Keep an ear on Doctor 2, Patrick Troughton.
We're all going to be killed shortly unless you switch over to sectional air supply. What are you talking about? The Cybermen are going to poison the air.
If you thought you heard him say sexual air supply,
Over to sectional air supply?
you wouldn't be alone. It was supposed to be sectional air supply, but that's how the show was broadcast. Even the men in rubber suits couldn't have their mistakes erased. Here's Roger Moore in a 1964 sketch with Millicent Martin. In it, he plays a spoof version of 007 years before he did it for real in the movies. Already, he's the suave, unflappable Roger we got to know and love.
Well, that's the end of my holiday.
Yes, mine too. No more being... Oh.
And the end of me.
Well, it was a nice trip.
Well, it lasted, yes.
Even in the face of a thundering great balls-up, Roger is neither shaken nor stirred. A consummate audition.
The power failure halted underground trains. Let's try again. Hello? Yes, I can.
Back at BBC Two, Gerald Priestland is still auditioning for a part in Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Mm-hmm. You're right, you are.
It's painful, but at least it's not potentially fatal.
Hello, my darlings.
Unlike this live sketch, featuring diminutive slapstick actor Charlie Drake. The script called for Charlie, not a stuntman, to be pulled through a shelving unit. In rehearsal, the shelves were lightly glued together. During lunch, a carpenter decided to nail them in properly, without telling anyone. When Charlie was pulled through the shelves on cue...
Oh, bloody hell.
He was knocked out.
He's actually unconscious, isn't he? Oh, that's awful.
So that was real. I've never seen it. Good Lord, I'd heard the story.
The script then called for him to be thrown through the window, and because it was live, the other actors carried on regardless.
Live television.
What the viewers at home didn't realise was that Charlie Drake, still absolutely out for the count, was taken off the set around the back and straight to hospital.
Excuse me. Yes? Right. Yes. We are going to repeat this news summary in 1 minute.
That would have been regarded on that night as inventive of the BBC to cover themselves in that way and get the news, and Gerald Priestland would have got praise, quite rightly, for conducting it so confidently, and it would have been all okay.
Well, that is all for the moment, I think. Anything else? That's all we have for the moment, but we will be keeping in touch.
That was a country I lived in as a 24-year-old. I probably didn't find it hilarious at all. It's ridiculous.
It wasn't just TV performers who had a remarkable lack of fear of things going wrong. To our modern eyes, the 1960s general public were pretty hardcore too. Top People is a slice-of-life film about the rebuilding of London after the war that seemingly blasted away working men's nervous systems. They lived and toiled on the edge.
The new city and skyline will harmonise with and incorporate the best of the old, especially the Wren churches.
Careful, why is he walking right along the edge? That's totally unnecessary.
You need the steel nerves of a mountaineer for this job.
Oh, no.
Whew. God, I don't believe that.
The things that people had to bear during the war, I think it made them different. I don't think they thought about disasters, really. As long as there wasn't a bomb involved, they'd do it.
No construction worker would have climbed hundreds of feet above the ground without his vital safety equipment, a flat cap and an unfiltered cigarette.
The famous Fourth Bridge, and this is John Watson speaking. I'm here to carry out one of the can't-see tests with the new Churchman's Tip. The men who maintain the bridge are helping me during their lunch break. Each of them is smoking 2 cigarettes.
These men are painting the Fourth Bridge, a famously never-ending job, and by smoking a cigarette in each hand, had created a never-ending fag break.
Which cigarette do you prefer? This one.
I suppose when you're routinely facing death by plunging 300 feet off the Fourth Bridge, maybe the possibility of lung disease did seem comparatively trivial.
Churchman's Tip.
Unfortunately for those workmen, the Health and Safety at Work Act wouldn't come into force until 1974. which was good news for the BBC's Tomorrow's World show, because they could schedule a live TV stunt like this one in 1968. It's a test of a new Bulletproof Shield with real ammunition.
How do you feel about shooting at a live target, Jim? Well, I don't exactly enjoy it, but the object is to save life, and I feel the course is a good one. A deadly weapon at much longer range than this. At this range, totally terrifying.
I mean, that's pretty close, isn't it? Wow.
Oh my God, he's going to shoot him.
You all right, Walter? Oh, yes. No trouble at all, no pain? Right, what have you got this time? Oh, this is the James Bond one. Walter PP. Walter PP. Automatic, yeah?
Look at this. I mean, this is madness.
I mean, this is crazy television. This would never happen nowadays.
Well, now we come to the really terrifying piece in the armory, this Magnum 44, which is capable of stopping a car.
Magnum 44, that's Dirty Harry's gun. I mean, he could at least go back a bit. He's about 6 feet away.
That made you jump a bit.
There's two of them. This is gang violence.
Remember, this ludicrously dangerous stunt is a safety demonstration. Safety.
Are you all done? One more to go.
This was a generation whose duty was to waste not, want not, especially when it came to bullets. But this was an era in which protective clothing was distinctly optional. This 1968 BBC Two documentary beamed the fearless world of the nudist directly into British homes. Yep, this is DIY, with the emphasis on the why.
Isn't that rather dangerous with no clothes on?
Well, I suppose several jobs are. I think the most dangerous job that a naturist can do is to fry sausages.
This alfresco handyman is yanking a winch, barely, get it, inches away from his block and tackle.
Isn't that a dangerous job?
It could be, if you didn't know what you were doing.
But isn't it a real case for clothes doing a job like that?
Could be, of course. But, well, it's obvious I'm puffing it. It's a warm job.
I love naturalists who wear glasses. This makes them look funnier. Like, everyone else is just completely naked, but he's wearing glasses.
Factual TV showed us a world where bespectacled men thought nothing of their personal safety. Oddly, that was also true in light entertainment.
Generally known to the public that I'm a guy who can handle his fists pretty good.
On its Hippodrome variety show, broadcast one Thursday in 1966, ITV decided to take internationally famous comedian Woody Allen and pair him off against a 6-foot kangaroo. All in front of a live studio audience and 8 million viewers.
What? Is that a real kangaroo?
Now, obviously, you get this on YouTube, but not on TV. You can't get away with that on TV. Where we are online now is where TV was in the 60s and 70s.
This is the first time I've ever found Woody Allen funny.
Next, teenagers gone wild.
You don't mind him being called Hitler?
No, I think it's a great name.
Things moved pretty fast in the 1960s, but not for everyone. Most people were spectators. TV was a window on a racy new world, but outside your actual window, things were, well, a bit ordinary.
Those images of the swinging 60s that we have in our heads, I think those were largely confined to quite a small number of people. For most people, I think the British 60s were rather a continuation of the 1950s.
The reality of the 60s was it was deeply dull for most people. It was grey, it was, dreary.
And if you didn't have the money to buy a telly but still wanted to watch stuff, this 1961 newsreel contained a load of whizzo ideas about making your own fun.
London's supposed to be the place to see the sights. You can spend a lifetime there looking, for nothing.
Looking doesn't get tougher than this.
No need to go to the zoo. In pet shops nowadays, you'll find animals of every description. You can stand and watch for hours without spending anything.
You can just go and stare in the window of a pet shop.
Oh my God, the 60s was bleak.
Anybody making a hole in the ground is a surefire draw wherever you are.
What?
The bigger the hole, the better the looking.
Road workers were very much the celebrities of their day. People would queue for hours to talk to a road worker.
Whether it's a liner like the Edinburgh Castle or a little tug busying its way around, they're all fascinating. And as the liner passes, you can have a free luxury cruise in your imagination.
luxury cruise in your imagination.
Happy
Not good
birthday,
enough.
Dad. We've got a great day planned for you. Pet shop.
Hole.
And let me tell you, it's pretty big.
In the post-war years, there were two kinds of people, adults and adults in waiting. But in the 60s, for the first time, children were fast becoming the stars of the show. This is the Child of the Year competition. It's not clear what these nippers are being judged on, or why someone decided it would be a good idea to dress them up like this. TV producers were becoming interested in children as human beings, and so fair game for social experiments.
In a North London street, we tied a dog to a railing. A hidden camera recorded what happened. Within 5 minutes, the dog was released. Later, we chained a child to the same railings in the same street.
That's nuts. How could they just walk past a kid tied up like that?
After half an hour, no one had made any attempt to remove her chains or even to comfort her.
Like, people love a dog. We love a dog. But you would stop for a child. Actually, probably these days, someone would, you just take a photo of it and Instagram it, and you'd think it was an art installation.
Being under the grown-up radar sometimes meant kids got served up weird and challenging telly. This is Proto-Python sketch show Do Not Adjust Your Set. Broadcast to children in 1968, it featured the young David Jason and Terry Jones and art pranksters the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Thank you very much. Now, friends, 3 years ago, 4 unknown boys and 1 little girl came all the way down from sunny Liverpool. And just look at them now. 6 men.
The Bonzos may have known what they were doing, but there's a chance the subtle joke at the expense of the black and white minstrels may have been lost on any 7-year-olds watching.
Only unmarried, looking for love, life was passing me by. So I sent off me photo, hobbies and age, magazine marriage I tried.
That is amazingly offensive. That is really dazzlingly offensive.
Only blown over and destiny's door, dollar they arrange a meeting.
The fact this is a children's program, that it was acceptable, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? I mean, play with your gollywog, little girl. Well, we've come a long way. We've come a long way.
By the mid-1960s, TV's grown-ups had identified a new species. Half adult, half child, the teenager. And they sent their cameras on expeditions into the hormonal jungle.
Girls between 14 and 17 are already familiar with a world their parents know nothing about. A world with its own jargon, its own morality. It's the world of the ravers.
This 1967 BBC Two documentary is a sort of wildlife programme about a creature called the teenage girl.
Simon Dupree and the Big Sound are not a big group. They made a couple of records and they've been tipped for the top.
In this case, programme makers found a particularly exotic new variety of teenager, the pop star obsessed fan.
Do your mothers know you've come here this evening?
Yes.
Do they mind?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Would they mind if you were just to go out with Simon Dupree?
No.
And what time would your mother expect you home?
Anytime I get in. I get in when I like.
And you're 17?
16.
That was absolutely par for the course. That was the way things were. Girls were desperate to get close to pop stars that they fancied. They were desperate to have some kind of tangible proof that they had met, they'd been in contact with the star. It was such a huge thing, and they were taken advantage of.
This looks really nice for uniform.
For many years, we were actually more condemnatory of the girls than we were of the pop stars. After all, what, blue-blooded man worth his hire is not going to want to go to bed with a very beautiful young woman?
And they just asked for a lift?
As well as other things, yeah.
And what happens then?
Well, it depends what they look like, If they're nice girls, yeah, why not? We'll give them a lift. Why not?
It's actually quite sad looking back. It's a game with very, very high stakes, which those girls don't realise. Because the men in those days, pop stars, boys, were in a position of power.
The way in which we think about this has altered, and what was not acceptable, it would always be regarded as scuzzy, but at least sort of regarded as being understandable, is now regarded with total horror.
The hair-shaking rebels of pop had no truck with the previous generation, so it's surprising to see an idol like John Lennon showing some distinctly old-school attitudes.
Clap your hands. Clap your hands.
It's quite depressing, really.
Stand your feet on the floor. Well, someone just became my least favourite Beatle.
Looking at it today, with today's eyes, that's quite shocking. But back then, nobody would have turned a hair. Nobody would have thought twice.
Can you imagine if someone did that these days? If someone in One Direction did that these days? I mean, that would be it, wouldn't it? That's,
TV continued to be fascinated with what the wild youngsters got up to, and by the end of the decade, some of the tribes it uncovered were getting surprisingly primitive. This 1969 BBC Two documentary brought viewers the Black Country's take on the Hells Angels phenomenon.
Is there anybody with any disagreement why this wedding shouldn't become legal according to the angel laws?
No. So you married Hitler?
Yeah, that's right.
You don't mind him being called Hitler?
No, I think it's a great name.
As I say, if she does, she's a good girl. She's all right. If she's a naughty girl, I'll thump her head in.
You what?
I'll thump her head in. That's just one of the little things I want. Could slit her throat, hang her. Depends what kind of a mood I'm in. The angel's law. She did what I say, nothing else.
What do you say about this?
Well, I agree, because it's with the angels, so that's what I agree.
You can see from this why Hells Angels never became the main authority by which marriages were granted in the UK, because it doesn't necessarily seem like the marriage was based on the firmest of principles. Having said that, for all we know, Hitler and that woman might still be happily married now. She might have done 40 years of doing what he says, and they might be absolutely fine.
Next, find out what makes people react like this, and this. Before the 1960s, TV's heroes were solid, dependable types. The granddaddy of them all, played by actual granddad Jack Warner, was Dixon of Dock Green.
You don't know the half of it. When these geezers start, there's no hole in them. The only thing is to step in quick and stop it before it spreads. I've known 200 Irishmen fighting before now. I tell you, this could be war.
Dixon was like the BBC in a Bobby's helmet, moral and respectable. In an age of social upheaval, it was ITV that gave us a role model to match the times, the action hero. They came in several varieties. John Steed from The Avengers, the gentleman agent with a kick-ass companion, Mrs. Peel. Punchy spy John Drake in Danger Man, a hard-boiled maverick with no fear of emphysema. Lounge lizard Jason King in Department S. He had 2 eyes for the ladies.
Oh, she shouldn't have had to do that for herself.
And was so louche he'd crack open a bottle before breakfast.
I'd offer you a glass of champagne, but it's very bad for you in small doses.
And the biggest of them all, swinging bachelor Simon Templar, played by Roger Moore and better known as the Saint.
The name Simon Templar, he had that sort of knightly feel to him, chivalrous and righting wrongs. But on the other hand, he would be doing things that we would consider now politically incorrect.
What's the matter? Lockjaw? Well, let's see if we'll loosen it up.
Oh, no. Please don't.
Oh, please don't rape her. Oh, God.
No.
Oh, well, why the tears? You haven't been hit yet.
I deserve it. I am very silly, stupid, and childish.
He didn't actually spank her, but the whole scenario was so creepy. Like, basically, whatever this girl got in that room, she would have been asking for.
But he didn't hit her, so it was all right. Nothing wrong with that.
Roger Moore's character may have been a saint on that occasion, but he did have previous. Maybe the girl in green had seen this less than sensitive 1962 outing.
I've known some stupid jokes in my time, but you're just about the worst. Let me
There's a lot of gratuitous spanking going on there. The character of the Saint now, we look back on it and always go, oh yes, he was a gentleman. But with fresh eyes, we look at these clips and go, oh, that's really dark, you know. It's all about putting women in their place.
That's got to be some of the weirdest television I've ever seen.
Brutal. Shame on you, Roger.
So it was easy to spot the smoking, drinking, spanking good guys. But what kind of shape was the villain? Well, if someone disabled showed up, they were almost bound to be a wrong-un.
After them! After them! Don't let them reach the door! Go on, after them!
The disabled person, like the ugly person, it's a physical sign of moral delinquency. It's the equivalent of people saying, oh, they must have done something wrong in a previous life.
Quite often it was a plot thing that these people were taking out their frustrations on the world from their wheelchair. Why, curse you for making me this way.
I think you'll agree the automated assassin was a stroke of genius.
The motorised wheelchair is especially menacing, isn't it?
Loyal, obedient, and extremely efficient. Just how efficient you'll be seeing any moment.
The other telltale sign that you were up to no good was being willfully foreign. This character in a 1969 episode of The Champions looks a bit shifty. But the writers, giggling into their sleeves, have given him a rude name, so he can't possibly be the baddie.
Major Tuek? Yes, but I requested no escort. You are due at the President's Conference in 10 minutes.
I've loved The Champions just for that ever since. Major Twat.
Major Tuek? Yes.
And they were saying directly to us, 14-year-olds watching it, saying, have a look, that's his name. Look what we've got away with that the adults haven't seen.
Who's this? Let's call him a willing assassin.
Yep, the man with the Arab headdress just had to be the murderer. In the 1960s, foreigners on TV was something to be scared of. Not that we cast ethnic actors in the parts. No need. You might not recognise the actor straight away because of the ton of slap he's wearing, but the voice is a dead giveaway.
Oh. Forgive me. I shall be no longer than your meal demands. Please, make yourselves comfortable.
Yep, it's the voice of Wallace, last of the Summer Wines, Clegg, and professional Yorkshireman Peter Sallis.
As ever.
Peter Sallis?
Of background forbids it. But I am an individual, a student. You are...
Classic yellow face, with white actors made up to look Chinese. I don't think they quite had the sellotape pulling their eyes back, did they?
How else could you come here, study here, draw ample funds? I tell you, I am no Manchu.
I'm just trying to place Peter Sallis' accent here, whether he's going for Guilin or Beijing.
We're all more comfortable watching Peter Sallis going down a hill in a bath or having some sort of rural mishap in Last of the Summer Wine.
Accuracy of portrayal was a big issue on 60s TV. This character from the Avengers compensates for the lack of makeup with a funny voice and some massive false teeth.
Good evening. My name is Tailing. No, you do not know me, but I know you.
There was a kind of long history of the idea that of exotic Eastern villains who were ineffably polite.
But you feel it's sort of hiding, it's just a polite veneer, and really there's this sort of animalistic viciousness going on underneath.
I see I have captured your attention.
His accent may have been a work of fiction, but at least you can tell what part of the world he was supposed to be from, unlike this character played by Peter Wingard in another episode of The Saint.
Have you heard the old story of the killing of the golden goose?
A very excellent object lesson, sir.
Remember it.
What nationality was he?
Somewhere in Africa?
Ethiopian?
Is he meant to be Moroccan?
He looks like he might have an afro wig on.
Too dark to be an Arab, I would have thought.
Somewhere in India?
Amazingly, he's supposed to be Turkish.
Turkish?
You're joking.
Had anybody who made this programme ever been to Turkey?
He looks a delight, but not Turkish.
You will pay cash.
On delivery.
I don't like the clip. I hated the idea of blacking up. I thought it was unpleasant. Really unpleasant. But like a fool, I was hoping that maybe somebody saw it and would allow me to play Othello.
Next, a romantic world first.
Sexy or what?
Before the 1960s, there was one route in life for British men. Get a job, get married, have kids, and live disconsolately ever after. But increasing affluence and social change meant men could choose to be part of a brand new phenomenon, bachelorhood. These Dollybird-hungry Alfies about town were a hit new demographic for the TV makers. In 1969, the BBC piloted a new show to hit them squarely between the thighs.
Hello and welcome to Mainly for Men, and as the title implies, this is a programme, fellas, just for you.
Aiming to be suave and sophisticated, Mainly for Men packed in items about shark fishing, cars, and this.
Smoking match.
Yes, you're watching a half-naked woman lying in bed having a fag. This goes on for 3 of the longest minutes ever committed to tape.
This is what the 60s were like. People just used to lie around smoking with their breasts out. That's how I imagine the 60s.
Despite never making it to screen, the attitudes of Mainly for Men weren't anything out of the ordinary. Before Terry Scott appeared in cuddly sitcom Terry and June in the 1970s, he was on BBC Two at 9:25 on Saturday night, tackling the big topics of the day. In 1964, he delivered a highbrow wreath lecture on the subject of birds. No, not the feathered type.
We come now to the luxury limousine model. Expensive to maintain and not particularly economical to run. Runs on a mixture of a fuel composed of 2 part gin, 1 part vermouth. Needs constant refuelling if you're going to get the best performance out of it.
Oh, no. Come on, Terry.
Not easy to start when cold.
Oh, this is embarrassing, isn't it?
Once warmed up, handles very smoothly.
Oh, talk about being sexist. You could get away with it in those days, and people accepted it.
We come now to the continental sports model. This is something for the younger man, I found. However many models you take out on test, I think most men end up with one of these. Comfortable, cheap to maintain, easy to control, very durable, a nice little family roundabout.
I have to say, there are golf clubs and rugby clubs where they would still howl with laughter at that.
Actually turned my stomach even then, because I was getting that from middle-aged men, and sometimes quite knackered old men, this sort of thing, all the time.
I would do broadcasts in which, when I was interviewing people, they would have their hand on my knee during the programme.
We made this our best buy, didn't we? She was a lovely test.
This is the stuff that really makes my blood run cold, because it's just light entertainment, and yet everything about it is, it's talking to men only, and it's encouraging you to treat women as objects.
And just in case you were in any doubt about how Terry Scott felt about his chosen topic, his 1969 single made his position very clear.
I like birds.
It's true that the 1960s brought a form of emancipation to women. Clothing became less restrictive. And they were free to have a fag whenever they liked.
Never go without a capstan. Never.
It's a really romantic ceremony. Lovely hymns. Yeah. Lovely speeches. Sure. Fag break.
Oh, gorgeous.
Sign the register.
Yeah.
Another
fag break.
Another fag break, of course. Yeah.
Never go without a capstan.
Race was a big issue throughout the 60s. The wave of immigration to the UK in the 1950s meant that faces of colour were becoming more commonplace. At the dawn of the decade, there was a new and for some shocking phenomenon. People were falling in love across the racial divide.
The wedding of Lindsay Groves, a country girl of 18, to Donald Dunham's, a black man.
TV shows like People in Trouble, made by pioneering broadcaster Daniel Farson, were first in line to bring it to the viewing public's attention. In it, he interviewed people with experience of the topic.
How long have you been married? 5 years.
And a Tory party supporter who had no direct experience but nevertheless held some very extreme views.
As a parliamentary candidate, I've been into a good many working-class houses, where there have been many mixed marriages, and I've seen the children. And my view is this, that no first-class nation can afford to produce a race of mongrels. And that is what we're doing.
Oh, gosh, isn't it awful?
It's one of the reasons why France is a third-class nation today. Too much mixed blood. The black man has a different set of standards, values, morals, and principles. In many cases, their grandfathers were eating each other.
Oh.
Well, the lion doesn't change his spots in all that time.
Hearing him talk now, he seems insane.
Just ignorance, isn't it? Just ignorance. Have you got a daughter yourself?
I have a daughter who is young, charming, intelligent, with taste and discrimination.
Well, what would you feel if she said that she was going to marry a coloured man?
I should strongly advise her against it. I should ask her if she wanted to wake up in the morning and see a coffee-coloured little imp on the pillow beside her, calling her mummy.
I thought that old buffer's views were much more prevalent than people like to admit.
We don't give people like that airtime anymore. They're nut jobs.
I think a lot of these mixed marriages are caused purely by downright sex.
What is extraordinary is that people think now of the Second World War and they think of the rise of Hitler. But then you think, here's this character having these extraordinary reactionary views. So there's no idea of him saying, oh, we managed to put an end to Hitler and his views. This is a Hitlerian view as expressed by an Englishman who can walk out of the studio without being arrested.
Well, I couldn't disagree with you more, but at least you do say what you really feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To air these views unchallenged now would cause outrage. But what caused upset back then was quite the opposite. This is the 1964 ITV soap Emergency Ward 10. It featured impressive storylines and, unusually for the time, strong black characters like Surgeon Louise Marler. But on a Friday night at 7:30, they broadcast something truly remarkable. It's widely thought that the first TV interracial kiss was between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek in 1968. But 4 years earlier on Emergency Ward 10, a romantic storyline featuring the surgeon and a fellow doctor came to a head. What's about to happen is a first on British TV, and as far as we know, the first on TV in the world.
What are you doing?
I want to kiss you.
What for?
Just because.
Oh, I've not seen this scene before, but I know that the kiss between Kirk and Uhura caused absolute uproar in American culture. I wonder what the story is behind this.
Oh, boy. Sexy or what? Following morning, the newspapers were full of it. It was the headlines in the Daily Express. Black and white television kiss. On my doorstep were a couple of cameras, reporters, and I really didn't know that it was going to cause such a storm.
This was roughly about the same time, 1964, as a Conservative candidate in the Midlands putting out racist literature, if you want a nigger for a neighbour, vote Labour. So television was being progressive and saying, well, actually, this is fine, this is normal.
Whoever complained, it seemed it was enough for the show bosses to have Joan's character quietly written out.
I think there were several complaints about it. The television people pretended it never happened. They never spoke to me about it. They never mentioned it. And then they wrote me out of the program. They sent me back to Africa, where I was bitten by a snake and died. Can you believe it? It was extraordinary. Not one of the directors, the producers, the head of the station, no one called me in and had a conversation with me about it.
It may have cost Joan the part, but did the historic kiss change anything?
I don't think it started any changes at all, because you think about it, when did you next see a black and white television kiss?
We've seen how 60s television was open to fresh ideas, a fresh TV channel, and plenty of fresh air. However, at a time when assumptions were being routinely challenged, comedy writers embraced their old pal irony. In the 60s, saying one thing and meaning something totally different for comic effect was used as a weapon. In 1963, That Was the Week That Was the TV face of the satire boom. Sharp-witted university youngsters who otherwise would have been destined for the establishment, showing not an ounce of deference for the people in charge.
These guys, on television screen, were taking the mickey, to put it politely, out of politicians, establishment figures, archbishops, leaders of other countries, and pillorying them. And yes, this is wonderful. The lid was blown off.
You seem to us to have no respect at all for your institution.
Nonsense! I have great respect for our institutions. I lock most of my opponents in them.
In those days, they were trying like mad to get away from the past of entertainment, really. They wanted to make points, and they wanted to make you laugh, but made you think as well.
By the 5th year of Tory rule, they'd also given me TV commercials, trouble in Suez, Mr. Macmillan.
For instance, when the civil rights struggle was beginning in the US, Millicent Martin performed this song and dance number on Saturday night BBC TV, and the lyrics pulled no punches.
I wanna go back to Mississippi, where the scent of blossoms kiss the evening breeze, where the Mississippi mud kind of mingles with the blood of the niggers who are hanging from the branches in the trees.
Oh,
it's satire, those words are so jarring.
They may have rejected the values of the mainstream, but these clever young things still delved into the same dressing-up box.
You see it now, it's quite appalling to us. But that's really what satire should be. It should be hard-hitting like that. It should make a point, and my God, did she make a point in those lyrics.
Stop saying that word. I can't cope. I'm modern. I'm modern. I feel like I'm Alex in Clockwork Orange. It's very powerful. We've moved on so much with our language that we can't accept that. I find those words really hard to hear. I have an involuntary sort of spasm when I hear them in a song. What's interesting about this clip is challenging America's idea of patriotism. She's wearing Uncle Sam's hat. She's being an all-American girl. She's mocking the very core values of American culture. It's very clever. This is a really middle-class, very clever satire for, white liberal people. But there's a slight lack of heart to it, even though I know it's well meant, and that is what I find uncomfortable about it.
When they needed some minstrels to hammer home their message, they didn't get actors to play the parts. They hired the George Mitchell Singers, also known as the Black and White Minstrels.
It's kind of very topsy-turvy, the fact that they have used the Black and White Minstrels, and you kind of wonder if the members of the Black and White Minstrels got it.
They were employed, weren't they? They took the money, so they wouldn't mind.
So, that's the end of the 1960s, the decade that went from buttoned-up entertainment like this in 1960 to decadent dancing like this in the last Top of the Pops in 1969.
The trouble is nowadays we tend to think we're so enlightened. We're much nicer people than we were in the past. We're more kind and more polite. And we feel a bit smug.
It wasn't just in the world of entertainment and the world of television that was doing it. The whole tide of change was virtually unstoppable.
It was a decade of enlightenment and excitement. And I feel privileged in a way to have been part of it.
But we're not finished there. Next time, we spin forward to the naughty 90s and the dawn of Cool Britannia. And what could be cooler than this?
I'd do anything to be on TV.
So slightly retching.
Oh, sweet Lord.
Well, tomorrow night at 9, more nostalgia. Lol and Woody are enjoying family life while the rest of the gang are on the search for a good rave. This is England 90. Next tonight, well, what did the Gogglebox gang make of This Is England last week? All that and more on the way.